Welcome to Emotions Are Everywhere. Today we have Lesley Benson, who is somebody who deals with change that we don't expect. So she is a coach who deals with the unexpected change, that comes upon us when we least expect it. Parents who now all of a sudden have to raise their children by themselves, or empty nesters. Well, maybe that's a little bit more anticipated, still unexpected, I'd say. And then, of course, there is loneliness. And that's the topic we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Lesley. And maybe if I haven't covered it, is there anything else you want us to know about you?
Thank you, Angela, for having me. No, I think that is actually sort of, the broad umbrella, like lots of us, we don't realize, to be fair, how these events in our life are interlinked and create their own issues. We think we're sort of trucking along really happily, and yes, we can sort of cope with it, but often we find ourselves in a position, especially with the loneliness and divorce, that we've gone into action and survival mode because we've got other people that are dependent on us. And it's when we're in our own space from that we realize, oh, actually, I'm not been dealing with the emotions and what comes up from those.
Well, then, I mean, there's nothing more topical than that at the moment. I mean, with COVID and all of that, I mean, people are, thrown into unforeseen circumstances by themselves, with people they don't maybe want to spend time with. I mean, you can be lonely with other people around, right?
I think you can be very, very lonely with other people around. I think we go normal day society. For a lot of us, having spoken to quite a few people in the last few weeks, because you've got a routine, you go to work, or even if you're retired, you've got clubs you go to, you've got people you see. But of course, with COVID and the fact that it has shut down the world and everybody was told to stay at home.
Yes.
And the first couple of weeks, I think, everybody went into, well, this, it was that fighting spirit. Yes, we've got to do this. Yes, this is for our good. It's for other people's good. Those that sort of need shielding, we've got to make sure they're okay. We've also got to make sure that we don't spread this. Yeah. But then, of course, that you've got this space. And also there's been, lots of families have had grown-up children come back home. Where you've got used to your space and you've got used to your routines, and then suddenly sort of, whether it be, because all the evidence is out there, so many people in the economy globally don't have contract work anymore. So they've had to sort of say, well, I can't pay my rent, or, if they're young people, so they're coming back to home, or universities have closed.
Yeah.
It's all very well us saying the piece of, oh, well, I can work from home. But then, of course, you don't realize until you're at home, whether you're on your own or even with a partner, if you've got to set your office up so that you don't get the background noise of when you're on a Zoom call. I mean, everybody's had sort of, so many Zoom meetings. If you're in the same room, you can't have that conversation, so then you've got to find a desk in another room. But then, of course, the room that you're choosing is the box room in your house, or because it wasn't set up for your office. I mean, we both have offices that we have at home, so for us, we have got our space all set up, and it's there, and we've got other things and other rooms that we can work around and go in. But when you haven't got that, suddenly to sort of, look at that space and look up at the walls and think, you're very hemmed in. And of course, we laugh, there's been so many sort of magazine articles over the years, the relationship that was sort of built up around the water cooler, or, the person I met my partner at the coffee machine in the office, sort of, those type. I mean, we can make a joke of it, but when you're in your house, putting the kettle on or putting the coffee maker on, and you're the only person there, you still haven't got that break. And so loneliness becomes sort of that internal, and then you realize that, you know, it's our emotions that need to be supported.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I mean, you can be with other people in the same house, but if it interrupts your routine, and again, the water cooler, and maybe, I mean, I find that when I talk to people, they say, I don't have creative feedback on tap anymore. I can't just turn around to somebody and say, what do you think about that? I have to come up with my own solutions. I can't come up with, oh, yes, that's a great idea, but I have to actually think through this myself, or I have to schedule a call with somebody, which is really, really hard. But what I'm really curious about is, for example, there are people who are very used to being online.
Yeah.
Right. And they have a special name. And I think they probably will find it really hard at the moment to deal with things. But I would love to hear what you think about that. Teenagers.
Teenagers, yes, because of course they're used to being online. And I mean, having sort of spoken to lots of friends and clients that have teenagers, they're used to sort of playing their games. They're used to sort of having their chat rooms. They're used to being able to sort of go and hide when they want to actually not speak to the parent, or something's happened at school and they want to hide in their bedroom. So then they're in control of that conversation and that interaction they have. But of course, being told to spend time at home and do lessons online, it doesn't become their sanctuary, which it was before.
Yeah.
So now so what's happening is a lot of children sort of, you know, were very motivated to do their online lessons at the beginning. Some didn't have the opportunity, to be fair. You know, the economics for some families whereby, you know, they're in the poverty section of society, it's really exposed the limitations of the online community to them, because of course they were used to sharing a phone with their parents. So being told to do lessons, if you haven't got the laptop or the iPad, and you can't download the lessons, or if you've only got one of those in the family and you've got 3 children, being able to share that to keep up. So what it's led to is very much that group being isolated, and very much the piece of how are we going to pick up the pieces for this afterwards. Interestingly enough, I was reading an article a couple of days ago. The British Pediatric Society sent an open letter to the British government saying about the fact that children needed to get back to school ASAP for their mental health. So, you know, the doctors are very, very aware and very, very concerned that we are producing a gap in this. And as we know, there's so much research out there sort of thing with war zones. I mean, you think about sort of, you know, things that are put out by Oxfam, Save the Children. You know, you've had the civil war going on in Syria for many, many years. You've got the Lebanon when they've had war. You've had Rwanda, you know, all these places where media has picked up these wars. And then, of course, as you go, you know, forwards in time and then you look back, what they're noticing is the post-traumatic stress syndrome of these children. And this is the fear that with these children. So, you know, being aware that these children and elderly, you know, there is going to be very much the scales and the balance whereby you're going to see similar scenarios happening. And we as a society have actually got to flip how we deal with this loneliness and how this isolation, because this COVID, what it's actually done is it's pushed people, and those that sort of, you know, are very on the introverted spectrum, it's enabled them to actually retreat into that introverted. And so, and as we know, from when you have that side and of a personality, it becomes a haven, but actually coming out of that haven becomes the problem.
Okay. So basically now we have to deal with people who don't want to leave the house anymore, who develop agoraphobia. What's it? Agoraphobia?
Agoraphobia.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Agoraphobia is very interesting. Just as a, antidotal sort of situation. I was talking in the area that I live, we've got a social, bubble that we've had for which has been lovely, because I do live on my own. So, I could have been in that sort of situation of just having my own. So we've got beautiful gardens, communal gardens outside where we live. So we all sit sort of, in our social bubble, but it has actually enabled everybody to keep that peace up, which is one of the things I, definitely recommend, is creating situations where you can talk to people. But they have got a lot of elderly parents, and about 16 people have mentioned that their elderly family, who were told to shield, are petrified to come out of the house. Now, as I say, this is just sort of like, a quick snapshot. But if that's such a large number in the small village that I live in, which is a quintessential English village, that if we're seeing that here, you multiply that all over the world. And there was already in the elderly population, and globally, we do have a loneliness epidemic. And all the things that sort of, I've written about and talked about for ways to alleviate loneliness, COVID has actually sort of stopped. You can't go away on a group trip to a planned retreat or a planned, painting class where you're going to have doing the same hobbies, in beautiful Tuscany or something. At the moment, these things are not actually available. But I do think there's actually an opportunity for us to bring back both sections, so the elderly and the young, because of course children sort of are missing out on school, and we know that sort of that piece is very, very critical. But the elderly, of course, have been through the school system. They've been able to, gain experience. So
but they're not allowed to get in touch with people. I have a neighbor across the road, and I would love to, catch up with him, but he is in his 90s. I can't come any closer than 10 meters, basically. And that's the fear as well. So I love the idea of putting elderly and children together, and they've done that in Holland with great success, right? They've moved students into nursing homes or into retirement homes, and got the grandparents to to take care of the children. But now, if everybody is so afraid and you can't get people together, how do you do that? Do you teach the elderly how to Zoom?
Yes, and there has been. There was a lady here in the UK. I'm using the UK because it just is being here. It's reminded me. But back in the .com sort of boom, there was a young woman who did very, very well in that era. And then she had an accident. A woman called Martha Lane Fox. And she is an advisor to the government to set up teaching the elderly to do Zoom, to do Facebook, so that they can actually have contact with, and they set up a lot of free courses. So that's the piece. But what I was actually going to sort of say, that needs to be expanded. We need to have sort of like the buddy system, so that it's beneficial to the young person, but the benefit, of course, is going back to the older person as well. So that sort of, yes, you might be, and it's not the same, is it? Let's be honest about it. We're talking through Zoom, and we're talking, we know each other. We've spent time together over the years. But, yes, we can have that rapport and that interaction. But of course, there's nothing like sort of going to the coffee shop or going for dinner and sitting and relaxing and chatting and catching up on the world. We all do, we are human beings, and human beings were designed for touch and physical interactions, which of course, as we say, yes, it's great that I can see your face, it's great that I can laugh and talk and all of that, but and everyone has these experiences. But at the moment, you know, we want to sort of be going back into, you know, as restrictions are, but we've also got to support people to have that choice. And, you know, it's a bit like sort of a bear coming out of its cave after, you know, winter. You know, the bear, you know, that's my analogy of it at the moment, is that, you know, the bear wakes up after winter from its hibernation. Now it really, you know, has no idea when it comes out of the cave what's going to be there. Has the snow going to be sort of, you know, melted? You know, is the forest going to be showing signs of rejuvenation and sort of spring, etc.? But the thing that the bear does when it wakes up is it knows it's got to go outside, and it knows sort of innately that it's got to find food.
I'm going to challenge that metaphor for a minute.
Yeah, I do.
The bear deliberately went into hibernation.
Yes.
It deliberately went to sleep, so it knew it was going to wake up at some point and go outside. Whereas with our situation right now, people were literally yanked out of their daily environment into totally new conditions. Again, teenagers, you know, who are supposed to separate from their parents, rebel and challenge the norm, hang out with their peers, and, you know, rock the world. You know, all of a sudden they're stuck in the bedroom at home with the parents outside.
And can't even sort of, you know, climb their friends in through the window. I agree with you. The piece with the bear analogy was the piece coming out. I think if we're going to look at the beginning, I think war zone, sadly. You know, sort of the piece that's our only point of reference. When you look back to the, you know, the Blitz, the bombings of, you know, of any country, and, you know, that suddenly sort of, you know, your country is being thrown into war, and, you know, you just hear these planes coming and you run for cover. And I think that's the piece. And then, you know, that you don't know what's going to happen. And also the other sort of, you know, similarity with that, of course, nobody knows how long war's going to last. We didn't know how long this was going to last. But I wanted to bring it back. We still don't. But I wanted to sort of give that sort of optimism of the bear coming out of hibernation, because, you know, there is a renewal. And I think that's the piece that we want to be able to sort of harness, that we can renew. We can sort of, you know, step out and take those baby steps and sort of, you know, stretch our muscles like the bear does. You know, we've all seen the geographic programs and the nature programs, you know, that they're usually, I mean, the cinematography is amazing. Exactly. It sort of does that huge stretch, and, you know, and it stands up on those sort of, you know, hind legs, and sort of, you know, that magnificence. And that's the piece. It's sort of that optimism that, yes, we are going to have to take baby steps. Yes, we are going to have to sort of create new social norms to have interaction. And at the moment, I mean, I know sort of you're in the southern hemisphere at the moment, of course it's winter. You know, in the northern hemisphere, the fabulous piece about this at the moment is, of course, it's summer. And, you know, Europe this week is going to have a heat wave. The jet stream is sort of, you know, bringing heat. They're saying in England it's going to be 34 degrees. You know, so people can actually, so the great thing about that, of course, you know, like, because England is not like Australia and isn't set up for, you know, aircon and summer sort of thing, houses are going to be hot. So we're gonna find people who are going to be pushing themselves out, whether even, because some people haven't even gone to their garden. Because you know, like, well, the air, what bug, you know, this invisible invader. And so this is going to actually sort of, which is, you know, even though it's sort of such a small step, people are actually sort of stepping outside their front door, and because they're hot, is, you know, as we know, we've all got sensors in our system that sort of, you know, we go, oh, actually I did that. Oh, wow. Oh, it was. And that subconscious bit, oh, I didn't know that was going to be okay. So, and then of course then people start saying hello. I mean, the one good thing about this, I don't know in your neighborhood, but we have everybody around where we are as been dog walking because we've got beautiful English fields at the back of us, and the vets definitely won't be sort of needing to put the dogs on diets at the moment. It's been quite funny. But everybody walks past you, they do the social distancing piece, but everybody's saying hello.
Yes,
and
I've noticed that too.
And that was one of the things that sort of, I wrote an article last year about saying hello. And I said, you know, like, because people said, oh, people don't notice you, don't talk to you. But this is, which gives me hope, because I always used to say, don't expect a reply back, but always say hello. You know, one of the ways to give yourself confidence is to allow yourself to say hello. And of course, that piece is now happening. So I'm a very excited person that thinks, well, that gives me hope that we will actually keep going and keep sort of, you know, asking how you are.
Yes, and it was funny because at the beginning, I remember when I went walking, and I mean, very mindful of the physical distancing, you know, people would literally swerve. And anytime I said hello, and I say hello to anybody because I like you, I like saying hello, people would literally grunt or turn away because it was like, ooh, I don't know if you're dangerous. But again, with loneliness and with the realization that we are so connected, like, I mean, I walk my neighbor's dog occasionally, and and I get to talk to people now I have never talked to before, and I've seen them before walk their dog, and they've never acknowledged me, and now they stop and we have a little chat. Or again, the frequency in which people say hello has just increased dramatically.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So let me just summarize. So we're pretty lonely at the moment, being at home. And in this northern hemisphere, you're coming out of your shells because it's summer, and we're going in the southern hemisphere because it's getting colder. But what kind of tips do you have for us on how we can deal with loneliness at the moment that we can actually utilize while COVID is still, you know, a force to be reckoned with?
I think recognizing that, you know, this, you know, it's become a very big saying at the moment, you know, this too shall pass. I mean, even the Queen said it in one of her speeches a couple of weeks ago.
93?
94. She's 94. Yes. And of course, she's been in social isolation. She hasn't been able to see her children. So, you know, I think the piece of realizing that sort of we, you know, again, another very overused saying, you know, we're in this together. We really are in this together. And this piece of sort of like keeping up, you know, being kind to yourself, sort of accepting that, you know, and recognizing that, you know, these are very, very different times. You know, most of us have got, you know, if you were, you know, our elderly parents and grandparents, if you're still lucky to have them alive, did live, you know, certain of them did live in war zones. You know, some people, as I say, have been refugees because of the war zones. So remember, you know, that you went through that, you got to the other side. Remember that sort of, you know, it takes baby steps. And to acknowledge to yourself that, you know, one of the things is, you know, I am having a hard day today. I am, you know, struggling with the fact that I have got used, you know, I've got bored of the four walls, and say that to people. You know, we have actually set that up in our group here. We all say, you know, we have this thing, how are you doing today? You know, is it a good day? You know, a bit like traffic lights. Is it a red day where it's a really tough day? Is it yellow where I'm doing okay? Or is it a green day? Well, yeah, no, I've got a lot achieved today. And because there's all different age groups. And so we're actually sort of saying that and allowing ourselves, you know, if it's a red day, well, how can we help you?
So this whole situation and the loneliness has helped us become more emotionally aware?
I believe it has.
That's what I'm, you know, like I'm going for that.
Yeah, I believe it really has. And also people are asking the questions, you know, like, oh, yes, you know, I want some normality of being allowed to go out, being able to sort of plan a holiday, being able to meet my friends, go for dinner, etc., etc. But there's another piece that with emotional intelligence that seems to be sort of emerging, and sort of, you know, becoming a bud of like you, real excitement, is, well, what do I do to support people emotionally and to support myself so that I can manage these situations better? I think the awareness that's coming up is that because we have all been lonely, you know, and realizing that our support systems, it's like, well, making sure that I appreciate and I've got gratitude for those support systems, but how do I actually expand and ripple out to other people so that they're brought in and not left behind?
Yeah. I mean, I generally say there is no negative emotion. You know,
I agree with you.
Every emotion has a positive intent. And I think loneliness definitely has a positive intent, because it helps us to realize how connected we really are, and how important it is to have other people around us. So if this time has helped us to connect with other people, yay, I'm all for that.
I agree. And I think, as you say, every emotion does have a positive intent. And the thing about sort of, you know, the ones that sort of can be perceived as loneliness are just markers to say, well, what do I want to change?
Yeah, exactly. And this is a time of waking up, isn't it?
It very much so.
And it's there.
Yes. Yeah, it really is that time of waking up and realizing that sort of, you know, there are things that you can do to emotionally support you, but also how to strengthen you. You know, because when we've got, of course, it comes then, you know, if you can strengthen yourself, you've got resilience.
Yeah.
And then you know, you've got that skill to move forwards. And of course, everything, you know, going back to the conversation piece, every conversation then enables you to be able to sort of speak to somebody else from a point whereby you're helping yourself, but you can be actually helping somebody else. You know, that old adage, you never know what you say to somebody and how it's going to actually impact them.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to keep reaching out, even if it's at a distance of 10 meters, you know,
exactly.
knocking on the door and then taking a few steps back, but checking in with each other and making sure that we're all okay.
Very much so. And offering support.
Yeah.
You know, that's the other piece, this whole piece of, you know, how can I volunteer my time? You know, whether it be sort of, you know, that you actually sort of, if somebody says, oh, if you're going to the supermarket, can you add this on your list and leave it at my door, that piece, or, you know, oh, I need my medicines picked up. You know, there's lots of volunteering situations like that. But also I think what it's actually done is things that we would have perceived as being beneath us in terms of helping or as a job, because so many people's jobs have been taken away from them. The piece that we're now recognizing is those key jobs that we never gave any credence to and any sort of, you know, awareness. Suddenly we're realizing, you know, like when something like this happens, they're the ones that really do keep going. And so, you know, like, how can I help them? You know, there's so many, and that's a really good piece to actually recognize that sort of we, you know, even though we've been made to isolate, we are really not an island.
Yeah.
And how do we get those spokes? So it could be that sort of, you know, like you just help 1 hour or half an hour or 10 minutes or, you know, something, but just remembering that, you know, which is an alleviation of loneliness, of course, is that when you reach out, you think you're doing something for somebody else, but they're actually doing something for you.
Yeah. It always goes both ways. And I to maybe just put the bow tie around it, because you said at the beginning, you talked about the fact that even though people are with other people in the same, you know, confined space, it doesn't mean that they're not lonely. I mean, if you have a parent, for example, with children, and you have a single parent, for example, they will be very lonely because they don't have any adult to deal with. So I would say, don't assume that somebody is not lonely just because they have people around them.
I mean, I was a single parent for many, many years. And I would say that was probably one of the loneliest times, because you're trying to hold it together for your children. And of course, the piece at the moment with children sort of being very concerned about this unknown fear, and they're voicing their concerns, you've got nobody in the household to bounce your concerns off. So as a single parent, or for single parents out there, you know, pick the phone up and, you know, like the traffic light system that I used, you know, sort of like speak to your friends, your sisters, brothers, you know, parents, if you still got them alive, and say, you know, and instigate your own traffic light system. Yeah. Even if it be just a text sort of thing, you know, when you get up in the morning or when you go to bed sort of thing, you know, say today was a green day, you know.
So don't wait for somebody to ask you, go and reach out, but ask anyways.
Ask and reach out.
And don't go, you are okay, aren't you? Please don't come too close. You know, I'm just checking in because I really don't want to know. Really ask if you want to know, you know, and want to know.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask, you know, because we're all thinking, you know, oh, we've just got to soldier on, but of course that doesn't serve anybody. But the other piece from that is that you don't know if they're not okay. Exactly. So having the courage to actually recognize that sort of, you know, you need to tell them that you're having an amber day. Then they've got the opportunity to tell you that, oh, actually I'm having a red day. And that piece. So, you know, as we said, it is this two-way street. And sometimes we've got to be the instigator, you know, sometimes we've got to put our foot on the accelerator and be the one that sort of, you know, is at the starting line and takes off first. So, you know, and the person that's sort of at the side of us has got the opportunity to catch up.
I'll generally say to people, when you call somebody up or they call you and they tell you how miserable they are, don't come back and tell them that you're more miserable.
Yes.
You know, it's like, as you said, you know, I'm having an amber day. If I come back and if you tell me you have an amber day and I come back and I say, I've got a really bad red day, it basically tells you that you can't have those feelings because I am suffering more. And I always have this on my table. That's the drama queen tiara, you know, it's like everything's so terrible. So again, when you reach out to somebody, make it clear that you are the one who's reaching out and that you want some support. And again, when we have that empathy, we don't come back with, oh, you think you're doing it tough. Let me tell you how tough I'm doing it. Just listen and just be there for the person. And then if you feel that that's triggered you or you feel worse, go to somebody else, call up, you know, if I have already talked to you and you've told me, you know, you've told me how terrible you are and you're having a really bad red day, I'm not going to talk to you about that. I'm going to call somebody else and say, I'm having a shit of a day.
Yes. And that's the piece, you know, being able to acknowledge that whatever feelings we are having are ours.
Yeah.
And being able to say it without being judged.
Yeah.
You know, that's the piece. It's allowing everybody's emotions to be valid. Yes.
No matter what they are. Thank you. That was the perfect summary. Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you, Lesley. And yeah, well, I hope you'll come back to Australia sometime soon when you're out of your enforced stay in the
UK. I know. I like that. Well, I had to take a place, didn't I? So sort of thing, because of course there's no flights, and Qantas is not allowing any flights or in for a long while. So yes, I'm looking forward to coming back. So we will do as we were talking about sort of thing, our in person. Rather than our Zoom, but we're still keeping in touch and sort of, you know, talking through this medium. But yes, I definitely look forward to seeing you in person when all of this is over.
Okay, all right. Well, this is the way we do hugs at the moment. Thank you so much. And I will see you soon here or there.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having me, Angela.
Thank you, Lesley.